Welcome into another edition of Sports Junkies, a special Baseball Hall of Fame edition. See Sparky Fifer along with Greg Giesen, my good old buddy, on the other side of the camera this time as we talk about the Baseball Hall of Fame selection. They end up putting in a couple of Braves pitchers, Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine, and the big hurt Frank Thomas, which a lot of people, obviously, if you're from the Kenosha-Racine area, have seen play pretty much his whole career with the Chicago White Sox. I was never a huge fan because I hated the White Sox as a Brewers fan, playing in the AL and everything else. Now, having said that, I admire Frank Thomas for being as vocal as he was against steroids towards the end of his career, and that is why I was happy to see him get in.
He is one of the top players of all time, offensively.
Sure.
I mean, people can detract defensively, but here's a guy who had, we assume legitimately, because he never failed the test, wasn't in the Mitchell report, was vocal against it, did everything you were supposed to do, and he hit 500 home runs, 300 career batting average. You put those two things together, you automatically have a Hall of Famer. I don't think there was any doubt with Glavine or Maddux. You know, the hard part for me is that all of a sudden it's gone from these three guys got in the Hall of Fame. They're very deserving first-timers. It would have been a nice thing to sit there and talk about Craig Biggio and say, Two votes. And
because somebody had to vote for Armando Benitez
5 times.
That is.
Jock Jones,
he got votes. Come on.
JT Snow, 2 votes.
Crazy.
Okay. Now, that's not to say any of those guys didn't vote for Biggio.
I don't care. But you want to take away a Hall of Fame vote from Dan Le Batard because he gave his fan ballot to Deadspin. Those fools that voted for JT Snow, they should have theirs yanked. Armando Benitez, have theirs yanked. I mean, that's why you should be yanking votes, because these people are incredible who they're voting for.
See, now, what Dan Le Batard did, I agreed with everything they did to him. I because he gave, you earn the privilege to have the ballot.
Sure.
You gave it away. Now, people come up and say, well, you know, if you ask for advice, you're giving it away. No. If you ask for advice, you're making the decision. What he did was he went out there and said, I'm giving you the ballot.
Absolutely.
You tell me who to vote for, and I will vote for him.
Right.
Now, that's not making up your own mind. That's not taking the privilege you're given. And this is the problem, one of the problems I have, is now we're talking about a process instead of celebrating the people that are going in, because this jamoke decided to go up there and say, I'm going to give it away. It's all about me.
Right. And again, we get back to this, and I got asked this morning whether or not I think Bonds will ever get into the Hall of Fame, or whether or not I think Clemens will ever get in, and so forth. There's been talk that the Baseball Writers Association is going to expand again. And once it expands, you're going to have the 30-year-olds and late 20-year-old guys that have been covering baseball for a few years. They're going to start having these votes now. When that happens, that is going to be their best chance to get in, because the younger generation looks at a guy like Barry Bonds and says, well, before he started doing whatever he was doing, he had Hall of Fame numbers, he should be in. Well, Clemens had Hall of Fame numbers too, so he should be in too. And you're going to have that type of thing going. And the person I was talking to came back at me and said, all right, Sparky, well, if that's the case, then put Terrell Davis in the Hall of Fame. Because if Terrell Davis's career wasn't cut short, or Bo Jackson's career wasn't cut short, they would have been in the Hall of Fame as well because of the run they were on prior to their injuries. What's the difference? I don't have an answer.
No. I mean, if you're going to do that, and you can go through baseball history. The one person that comes to my mind is Tony Oliva.
Yep.
The guy blew both his knees out. Right. He was a phenomenal hitter up to that point. He was relegated to being a DH. You know what? Does he deserve to be in? Not right now, but if you're going to sit there and start projecting things out, possibly, yeah. But then again, you look over the other side. Kirby Puckett went in.
Yep.
Now, would Kirby Puckett deserve to go in? He had great moments. He was a great player, but he didn't have 3,000 hits.
Yep.
His career was cut short because he had glaucoma.
It's
tough to say, but did he have enough? People thought he did.
No, I agree with you on that. We go back to who got into the Hall of Fame. Frank Thomas we talked about. And then there's Glavine and Maddux. Smoltz is going to go in. I think he's on the ballot next year. So those two are in. You look back at that Braves team with those three, is that one of the more disappointing eras? Because if you put 3 Hall of Fame pitchers in a rotation and you don't come away with more than what they came away with World Series rings-wise, I mean, that's horrible. I mean, think about that. I'm going to give you 3 Hall of Fame pitchers for 10, 12 years, whatever it was, and you're going to get, what, 1 ring out of it? I mean, come on. Seriously? That's it? That's all you're going to come out with? 3 Hall of Fame pitchers? Nah.
Ask Jim Kelly how many rings he'd like to get out of the 4 Super Bowls. Or
Absolutely.
Out of those 4.
Right.
But
it's the same thing. It's the same thing we do to Brett Favre. You know, you were here for all those years. You got 1 ring. Aaron Rodgers could be here for just as long and get 1 ring. You're talking about 30 years with 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks. You can come out with 2 rings. If I was a Braves fan, I'd look at that and go, how did we only end up with 1 damn thing?
Because you look on the other side of it and say, there were Hall of Famers on that Yankees team, too. There were.
3 Hall of Fame pitchers.
You had. Look at the Yankees roster. You're going to have at least 3 Hall of Famers on that team, too.
Oh, sure. I'm sure
you're going up against them, and you look at the other teams that they faced. Now, granted, the Marlins, it was a bought team. Totally bought team. But when you look at those teams that they played, they beat the Indians.
But they're the Indians.
Yeah, but that was a loaded team.
That was a stacked team, and they developed that through their farm system.
Right, and you can look at it and you could say Jim Thome's going to be in the Hall of Fame. That Manny Ramirez, no. But you're looking at Albert Bell.
Yep.
Could have been.
Yep.
You just sit there and you look at the stacked lineup.
Bayardo was on that team too, wasn't he?
I mean, 1-9, that was one of the most feared hitting teams. Those are the things you go up against, and just to make 14, well, I think it was 14. 14 years of making the playoffs straight, a whole decade.
It doesn't matter. Stop. It doesn't matter. It's like the Packers. It does not matter because I'm sorry, you make the playoffs 14 years straight. You have 3 Hall of Fame pitchers in your rotation, and you got 1 ring. No, I'm mad if I'm a Braves fan. I am mad because it's like the Bills team. They didn't even get 1, and you've got Hall of Famers on that team too, Buffalo Bills team. Nobody brings it up when they're celebrating these 2 guys being in the Hall of Fame, but that's crazy.
Of course, maybe that's why Braves fans never went out.
Well, maybe. Yeah. Now, Alex Rodriguez is another character. In character, his suspension ends up being 1 year. He'll miss all of next year, getting reduced from whatever it was, 210, 211 games, down to 162 fine. Then we have the 60 Minutes TV show, which Tony Bosch comes out from Biogenesis and does this interview saying that he'd been giving players and so forth stuff for 10 years, apparently, a decade, and talked about how him and A-Rod came to know each other and just how precise it was and how you could take these little gummy bear-like things during the game. Just in the dugout during the game, cheating. That is insanity to me. And to talk about how to beat a drug test. When you take a urine test, don't do it at the beginning when you start, and don't do it at the end before you're done. Do it midstream, and you're not going to get caught. What? Who knows this stuff? So now you start looking back at potential Hall of Famers. How do we know? Who is he working with? I mean, that's a long time. Now, they got some of them. They got Braun, They got A-Rod, and a bunch of other role guys. But how many other people have been doing this, and for how long have they been doing it and beating the test? This is a test that MLB thought they had locked, stock, and barrel. No way anybody's beating our test. Tony Bosch goes, cakewalk, no problem. I'll show you how to beat it. Crazy.
There are 2 things, though. First off, if this thing was so foolproof, how did Ryan Braun get caught?
That's true.
How you got to wonder. What was he doing? And you had the 22-to-1 ratio.
And the Bosch thing was all about A-Rod. Yeah, I would like to have a Bosch moment now about Braun and ask that question. How did he get caught? My guess would be, Tony Bosch would say, he didn't listen to me.
Yeah.
That would be my guess. He didn't do it exactly the way I told him, where A-Rod was paranoid. And maybe Braun wasn't as paranoid as A-Rod, and Braun was kind of doing his own thing. I don't know. Obviously, I have no idea what Braun's deal is. But that way that whole thing played out, and listening to Bosch talk about Alex Rodriguez wanted to be a part of the 800 home run club. And the response was, 800? Yeah, he would have been the only member. It's never been done before. I mean, that's crazy.
But you look at it, when you do something like this, what blows my mind away is, okay, let's just, for the sake of argument, let's assume that Clemens did it and Bonds did it. Okay? No one ever talked. Greg Anderson was in contempt of court, and he went and sat in jail while the grand jury went, and he just sat there and nope, not saying a word, because you knew if you did something, there were going to be problems, I'm sure. Barry Bonds' people were going to be coming down on him.
I mean, Bosch talks about he was offered to go to Columbia, he'd be taken care of. He said, didn't really trust that.
No.
Then there were allegedly threats made against his life.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry. He went to OB for protection, and they've got him security guards. They got him everything to make sure he doesn't die.
Look at Clemens. Andy Pettit goes up and pulls something out of The Godfather 2
Right.
and just, maybe I wasn't right. Maybe
That's crazy.
Yeah, but in this case, people started talking.
Does Biggio make the Hall of Fame next year?
Yes.
I think so too. He is Greg Giesen of the Racine Journal-Times. I'm Steve Sparky Fifer. Thanks for tuning in for a special edition of Baseball Junkies here at RacineSportsZone.com.